He entered the room as if the entire event was for him. A dark suit, a phone in his hand, and that smirk. Blake Hunter, the new owner. We knew he was young, an aggressive investor, as he was described in articles. However, no one expected this. I sat with my notebook on my lap. A habit. Even on my last day, I was ready to write down my tasks. Although inside, I was already feeling anxious. The HR department was gone, and the door was guarded by 2 security guards I hadn't seen before. "Let's start with a short speech," he said. "I don't like to waste time." He spoke quickly, as if reading from a script, about the merger, about the new strategy, about how stability is important in business. Then he paused. He came closer. He looked straight at me. "Women in management are a risk," he said quietly, "and I don't keep risks on staff." I didn't immediately understand that he was talking about me. Then it dawned on me. The CFO is a woman. The commercial director is a woman. The head of the legal department is a woman. And he fired all of us on the spot. No explanation, no paperwork, just, "You're free to go." I stood up, not to argue, just because I couldn't breathe. "Linda," he said with feigned regret, "you've done your part. Now make way for those who aren't afraid of pressure." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew that every word would be used against me. When I left the hall, Martha from accounting came up to me. She was an elderly, quiet woman. She just put her hand on my shoulder. "He thinks we're weak," she whispered. "But he's forgotten that the strong don't shout. They come back, in a different way." I said nothing. At the time, I didn't know that those words were the beginning of everything. When I got home, I didn't take off my coat. I just sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the TV, which was turned off. I felt that if I opened my mouth, I would cry. And if I cried, everything would fall apart. Not because I felt sorry for my job. I felt sorry for myself, because I had allowed this to happen, because I hadn't seen it coming, because I had kept quiet when I should have spoken up. My phone was buzzing with messages from former colleagues, acquaintances, and people who had suddenly remembered I existed. They all wrote the same thing. "Shocked. We can't believe it. How are you?" I didn't respond. I didn't want to be part of someone else's surprise. The next day, I got up early, just out of habit. I made coffee and thought, who am I now? Not an employee, not a manager, not part of a team, just a woman who was publicly fired, as a warning to others. I went to the park, again out of habit, to breathe, to listen to the morning silence. And there, on a bench, I saw Claire. Claire was the legal director. She was fired along with me. She always walked with her back straight and carried a heavy leather bag. Now she sat with her hands clasped together, not looking at me when I approached. "He has no right," she said without looking up. "So what?" I asked. "Are we going to court? Against a billionaire? Against a team of lawyers?" She turned to me. "We're not alone. There are 6 of us, and we have papers, records, witnesses. You really think anyone will be interested? Everyone has forgotten. Then we'll remind them. But if you're not ready, I won't push you. I just thought you were the one who wouldn't forget." I didn't answer. But that evening, I took out my notebook again. Not for my to-do list. To write down, "He said I was a risk. I risked 17 years. He risked 1 order. Let's see whose risk turns out to be stupider." The day after my meeting with Claire, I woke up at 3 in the morning, for no reason. I just opened my eyes suddenly, as if someone had called me. The window was slightly open, and the room was cold. I didn't close it. I went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and opened my notebook. On a blank page, I wrote, "What do I know for sure?" And below, "I was good. I wasn't weak. I was convenient, as long as it was convenient for them." For a week, I didn't leave the house without a purpose. I called former colleagues who had left with the same wave. At first, it was just a talk, but the conversations quickly turned into confessions. Some cried, some were angry. But the main thing was that no one knew what to do next. "Do you think the law will protect us?" asked Janet, the head of strategic analysis. "The law is for those who have resources. He has an army of lawyers. What do we have? Facebook posts?" But Claire didn't give up. She gathered us at her house, 6 women who had once formed the backbone of the company's management team. We sat in her living room, each with a cup of tea, as if it were a regular meeting. But there was no relaxation on our faces, only tension. We have correspondence, meeting minutes, voice recordings that were made for internal archiving. There's even a witness who's willing to testify. He worked in HR and left a month before the purge. He said he saw lists with women's names marked in red. Only women. Everyone kept quiet. Then Melanie, the CFO, asked, "Do you really think we can win this?" "I think," Claire replied, "that if we stay silent, we're agreeing. I don't want this to happen to someone else next time. We had a chance to stop it, and we didn't." I felt something inside me break. I was still afraid. Afraid of losing, of looking ridiculous, broken. I was afraid of being alone again. But even more, I was afraid of waking up a year later and knowing that I had just walked away, closing the door behind me. Without a sound, just like they wanted. "We won't shout," I said, "but we'll definitely fight, legally, strategically, by their rules. Only this time, with our goals in mind." The next day, we created a group chat. We called it the Risk Team. It was ironic, a reminder, and a small first step toward not being alone. Claire took on the task of developing a strategy for filing a lawsuit. First, we needed to gather everything we had: documents, evidence, internal correspondence that someone had saved out of a sense of order, and others out of intuition. We agreed to work slowly, but systematically. Each of us took on a specific area. That evening, Steve called me. He was the former deputy logistics manager. He was still working at the company. "Linda told me you're up to something. I don't want to get involved, but be careful." Hunter wasn't someone who liked his plans being ruined. He knew how to play dirty. "Thanks, Steve. But if you don't want to get involved, it's better not to call. That's not a threat, just a warning." He fell silent. "You know, I always thought you were the right person. Smart. But now you seem dangerous." I didn't answer. And for the first time, I liked that word. I wasn't on autopilot. I was acting consciously. From the moment we agreed to go all the way, it was as if an internal mechanism that I hadn't heard in a long time had been turned on again. Every day, I set myself tasks: gather, check, secure. We rented a small co-working space in an old office building on the outskirts. Not because we were afraid, but because we needed a neutral, unclaimed address. Hunter was too well connected. All the places in the center belonged to one of his contacts. Claire brought a heavy folder that smelled like an archive. We spread the documents out on the table: transcripts, audio recordings, scanned letters, markers, sticky notes, flash drives. It felt more like preparing for an exam than for a fight. But there was something reassuring about it. Order. Clear boundaries. One of the audio recordings caught us off guard. It was a recording of a closed meeting where Hunter was discussing personnel strategy. "Women are emotional," he said. "They burn out, they get pregnant, they have families, vacations, complaints. I don't build a business on uncertainty." His voice was clear and confident. No jokes, just politics. After listening, there was a deathly silence. "If I hadn't heard it myself," whispered Melanie. "Now imagine what the public will say," replied Claire. We worked late into the night. Claire planned everything step by step, from gathering evidence to media strategy. So far, so good. We weren't going to go to the press, not yet, but we knew that day would come. A day later, I noticed a black car outside my house, several times. It wasn't blocking the driveway or anything. It was just there. The man inside wasn't looking at me, but I could tell it wasn't a coincidence, I told Claire. She wasn't surprised. "That means we're on the right track. But be careful. He may move from hints to action. He loses when he's not in control, and you've taken control away from him." I pretended I wasn't afraid, but just in case, I changed the locks and wrote down the car's license plate number in my notebook, just so there would be a trace. At the meeting, a couple of days later, we discussed the risks. Claire said bluntly, "Girls, this could drag on. It could get ugly. Someone will back down, and that's okay. But if we keep going, there will be no turning back." Martha, the oldest of us, slowly looked up from her cup. "I've spent my life waiting for someone to speak up for me. I don't want to wait anymore." That evening, we all signed the first official document, a collective statement of intent to file a lawsuit. No fanfare, just signatures, a dotted line between the past and the future. In the morning, when I left the apartment, I saw that the mailbox was open. The papers were untouched, just open. Not stolen, but open enough for me to notice. I slammed the lid shut and walked on, without quickening my pace. A threat without form is the most insidious kind. You can't pin it down, you can't complain about it. You just feel it, and you live with it. We decided it was time to bring in another lawyer, an outside, independent one, not from our team. Claire trusted a woman named Dana Reeves. She used to work for the Federal Labor Relations Commission and now consulted on private matters. She had a reputation for being principled and having a sharp, unpleasant manner. But that was exactly what we needed. Our meeting with Dana took place in a small cafe in the back row, away from the windows. It was my first time there, but Dana knew the waitress by name and immediately ordered green tea without sugar. "You have two options," she said, opening the folder we had given her in advance. "The first is to settle quietly. The second is to do it loudly. The first is faster. The second is messier." "And the third?" I asked. "There's always a third," she replied. "Give up." She leafed through the papers. Her face was expressionless. Only her long, unpolished fingernails moved faster and faster. "These records," she pointed to a page. "Are they real?" "Yes." "And you have backup copies?" "3, in different places." "Smart. I hope you have life insurance. This is no joke, Miss Bloom. You don't just have a lawsuit. You have material that can destroy the reputation of a man who thinks he's untouchable. He won't give it up easily." We agreed that Dana would advise us officially and ensure the protection of the material. She knew how to proceed, how to file complaints with federal agencies, how to file a lawsuit in the proper form, how to synchronize the legal and public responses. 2 days later, I noticed that my bank account had been frozen for verification. 4 days later, my husband's coworkers started asking him why his wife was getting involved in politics. He didn't say anything to me until I figured it out and asked him. "They'll get to the children," he said. "Are you ready for that?" I looked at him and suddenly realized, I'm not just ready. I'm waiting. Waiting for them to make another mistake. Because now I'm not afraid anymore. I believe. We continued to gather documents. Martha found an old presentation that outlined plans for staff optimization, and in black and white it said, "Outsource women's positions." Melanie collected reports on layoffs over the past 12 months. 89% of those who left were women. We put together a folder. I stuck a little note on the cover. "We're not raising our voices. We're raising facts." The first one of us broke down after 9 days. It was Janet. She didn't come to the meeting and didn't respond in the chat. Claire went to her house. She came back pale and silent. Then she told us that people had come to Janet's house. They didn't threaten her directly, but they made it clear that her husband's job could be reviewed and that her children could have difficulties with college. I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't. I just exhaled heavily. Janet was the mother of 2 teenagers. She had no other choice. We removed her from the chat, from our correspondence, from our documents. No hard feelings, only respect. She did what she could. "We have to be ready," Claire said. "Someone else might leave." "But I'm not leaving," I replied, "even if I'm the only one left." I didn't say it for effect. I just knew that I couldn't go on if I backed down. A day later, someone smashed a window at our co-working space. The security camera had been disabled. The police arrived 3 hours later. They said, "Probably just hooligans." But the hooligans didn't steal anything. They just left a note on the table that said, "Women don't fight wars, they lose them." Martha was shaking when she read it. Then she pressed her lips together and said, "I guess we've started a real war after all." Dana insisted that we move temporarily. She had access to a private office in the center, safer on a secure floor. We moved there that same evening. Claire laid out the next phase of the strategy, filing a preliminary complaint with the State Labor Board and publishing the material on a business blog read by investors and journalists. The article was written in a neutral tone, without names, but with facts. Layoffs, gender imbalance, corporate policy. We agreed. It was supposed to be a trial balloon, to show that we were ready to talk. 2 days later, the article was published. It didn't cause an uproar, but there were hints in the comments. I wonder who they mean. If it's what I think it is, I'm not surprised. There was a time when I also left because of such management. We didn't respond. We waited. Hunter didn't respond either. Neither his press office nor his lawyers made any statements, and that was worrying. He's not the type to remain silent for no reason. Then, in the evening, my daughter called me. "Mom, a man came to my school. He said you were a hero." He smiled strangely. The teacher sent him away. "Did he touch you?" "No, he just talked, but I was scared." I didn't tell her that it was a warning. I didn't tell her that his smile was a dirty trick. I just hugged her when she came home and said, "It's not your fault. This is my war, and I'll finish it." When I walked into the office that morning, Claire was already sitting at her desk, staring at her laptop screen. "We have a problem," she said instead of saying hello. "Hunter gave his first interview." We leaned silently over the screen. It was a short YouTube clip posted on one of the business channels. His face was confident, well-groomed, a little tired. A PR specialist sat next to him. "We have always supported diversity," he said, "but we also have a responsibility to optimize our processes. Some of the layoffs were difficult, but necessary. And yes, change is always painful, especially for those who can't adapt." Claire paused the video. He didn't name us directly, but he made it clear. We are weak. We are resentful. I wasn't angry. I felt everything inside me harden. It was like someone had turned on a cold light in an operating room. "Okay," he started. "Now we start." The next day, we filed a preliminary complaint with the State Labor Commission. The document was signed by 3 of us, me, Claire, and Martha. Melanie would join us later. We did everything according to the instructions, without rushing, but with the utmost precision. 2 days later, we were mentioned in the regional newspaper, a small article, but with a direct headline. "Former top managers accuse major investor of gender cleansing." Although no names were mentioned in the article, the calls started immediately. One of the first to call was a man I hadn't heard from in 10 years. Douglas Brim, the former head of the IT department, had long since moved to Chicago. "Linda, is that you? Are you really involved in this?" "Yes." "I didn't think you were capable of this." "Me neither, until I had to be." He fell silent. Then he said quietly, "By the way, I was at that meeting, when Hunter talked about risky women. I have a copy of the minutes. I took a screenshot because I couldn't believe my eyes. I can send it to you if you want." "I would appreciate that. Thank you." When I hung up, I suddenly realized we were no longer a small team. We had become a network. And the louder he spoke, the more people would remember what they had seen, what they had kept quiet about, what they no longer wanted to keep quiet about. The morning after Douglas's call, I walked into the office feeling like the whole city was watching us. We had become the topic of conversation, not rumors, but real discussions. Claire put a printout on the table, a list of people who had started sharing stories on social media about toxic culture in large companies. Some of them worked at our former company. Some worked at Hunter's subsidiaries. "This is the beginning," she said. "It's a chain reaction. People want to talk, but we have to be the first to not just talk, to act." That day, we planned our next move. Dana insisted that we formally notify the board of directors of the company Hunter had invested in about the complaint and provide copies of the documents, so they couldn't say later that they didn't know anything. It was a legal move, but also a moral challenge. If you remain silent, you are complicit. The letter was dry, professional, and carefully worded. No emotion, just facts. A day later, a response arrived. Short, neutral, written in legal language. "The board thanks you for the information provided. In the event of an official investigation, we will cooperate fully." No apology, no position, only fear, between the lines. And then, on that same day, the real blow came. Claire received a call from an unknown number. A male voice, polite, calm. "This is not your war, Miss Harris. You are young, smart. Why ruin your life?" She did not answer. She just hung up. And in the evening, I received a letter. Not an email, but a regular one. Inside was a newspaper clipping. It was about a woman who had gone to court and lost. And written in pen was, "The result is the same." I didn't tremble. I wasn't even surprised. I just took the clipping, tucked it into my file, and wrote on top, "Fear is not proof. It's their argument when they have no others." The next morning, a woman came to our office. We weren't expecting her. She knocked, introduced herself as Lena Montgomery, a former financial consultant on one of Hunter's projects. "I've been reading about you," she said. "I was fired too. No reason given, no explanation. But I'll never forget how he said to me, 'You're too confident for a woman. You scare our partners.'" She took a folder out of her bag. "I have documents too. If you'll take me on, I'm with you." We didn't know when he would really strike. We only knew that he would. But we didn't expect him to do it through the press. A week after Lena's visit, an investigation was published in a major business publication. The headline screamed, "Anonymous accusations threaten the investment climate. Who stands to gain?" Inside, there were references to sources close to management, hints at personal motives of those who were fired, and arguments about how women are ruining deals out of spite. Not a single direct refutation, not a single name mentioned, just poison between the lines. "He's playing dirty," Dana said. This isn't defense, it's an attack, a public attempt to make you look hysterical and jealous. We need to be ready. Claire stared at the screen, unblinking. I knew that face. She was holding on, but she was at her limit. They were thinking strategically, but it was really hurting. I can't read this, Martha whispered. I just can't. Then don't, I replied. Right now, what they say isn't important. What matters is what we do. That evening, we agreed to file a full lawsuit. Not a complaint, not a public letter, an official lawsuit in state court, a complete set of evidence, with signatures, with receipts, everything. The next day, we filed the papers through a trusted representative. On the way back, Claire said, From this moment on, everything will be different. We're not just complainers anymore. We're plaintiffs. He can't ignore us. He can only attack us. We were ready for this. And yet, when my mother called me that morning, a woman who had always kept out of my work, I was taken aback. Linda, what's going on? My neighbor stopped me today. She says you're suing some billionaire? Are you really getting involved in this? I exhaled. Yes, Mom. Why are you doing this? You could have found another job, lived a quiet life. I can't live quietly knowing that silence is now approval, and I don't approve. She fell silent. Then she said something I'd never heard her say before. Then hang in there. Don't be afraid to be strong, even if you end up alone. And I suddenly realized, I'm not alone. Even when it's scary, I'm not alone. The lawsuit was accepted. We got an official response. The case has been registered. Now it's all according to procedure. Dana warned us. It will drag on. It will be exhausting, slow, and dirty. They will drag it out, delay it, look for weak spots. Your job is not to break down. None of you, she said. Not in the media, not online, not at home. You are now the face of the process. Don't let them use your emotions against you. We divided up the roles. Who would talk to the press? Who would be responsible for the documents? Who would keep in touch with new witnesses? Yes, we already had witnesses. After the first publications, 3 former employees contacted us, wishing to remain anonymous. One of them was a former IT analyst who still had archives of correspondence. He said simply, I don't want my sister to end up in the same situation one day. That's enough. And then something we didn't expect happened. Auditors, an independent financial transparency organization, announced an internal audit of one of Hunter's companies. Our complaint was the reason. It was still unofficial, but enough for the media to pick up on it. The next day, the news feeds were buzzing. This is what he fears most, Dana said. Money. When his capital is touched, he loses his balance, and he really did lose it. A few hours after the publication, we received a response from his press service. For the first time, it was open and official. It stated that all personnel decisions were based on business logic, that some former employees chose the path of confrontation, and that all allegations will be resolved within the law. Claire smiled. He's not ignoring us anymore. He's defending himself. That means we've hit the mark. I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. This struggle had been going on for weeks. We lived in a state of constant readiness, as if a fire could break out at any moment. But there was one moment that I remember particularly clearly. In the evening, I went into my daughter's room and kissed her on the forehead. She asked, Are you going to win? I thought about it. Then I said, I don't know, but I'm not going to lose without a fight. The next week, we received notice of the date of the first hearing. It wasn't a substantive hearing, but rather an organizational hearing, a review of positions and presentation of the parties. But even that seemed huge. We weren't just talking. We were being listened to. The preparation was meticulous. Dana didn't let us out of her sight for a minute, rehearsing answers, repeating wording, giving clear instructions. This isn't an interview. This is a court case. Accuracy is important. No drama, just facts. The day before the hearing, we found broken glass in the parking lot next to our office. Nothing was stolen. They just smashed it and left. The surveillance cameras were not working. We didn't report it to the police. It had already become background noise. But something had changed. We started receiving letters, not threats, support. One woman from Texas wrote, I quit my job a year ago after my boss said that women in sales are a decorative risk. I didn't know what to do. But when I saw you, I remembered that silence doesn't heal. Claire read the letter aloud. Melanie wiped her eyes. I simply said, That's why we won't back down. No way. The courtroom was quiet. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at us with cold, businesslike efficiency. Hunter's representative, a smooth, confident man with perfect hair, spoke with forced politeness. "Our client does not admit any wrongdoing," he said. "All personnel decisions were made for economic reasons." Dana stood up and handed the judge the first folder of evidence. "We believe that the system was deliberately designed to exclude women from management positions. We are prepared to prove it." The judge nodded. "Both statements are accepted." The court will consider the arguments at the next stage. When we left the courtroom, no one spoke. Then Martha said, "We did it. We said it out loud, in front of everyone." It was only the beginning. But for the first time ever, I felt not just determination, but dignity. We didn't ask, we asserted. We didn't complain, we declared. And now it's impossible to stop. A week after the hearing, a man we never expected to see approached us. John Rollings, the company's former internal auditor. We knew him from corporate events, quiet, unassuming, always with a tablet. He never interfered, never commented. But now he had made an appointment himself. He came with a yellow folder in his hands. "I'm not one to rush into battle," he began, "but I've been watching this for too long. I've seen lists being drawn up, emails being deleted, reports being revised. And now," he took out printouts, summaries of internal correspondence, diagrams of dismissals, notes on emotional risk indicators. A special column that for some reason only appeared for women. "This isn't just your case. It's a system, a strategy." He spoke calmly, without drama, but every word hit home. We thanked him, and he left as quietly as he had come. Claire whispered, "We just got the key." The next day, a previously neutral news portal published an investigation. "The Hunter Model: How Firing Women Became the Norm." The article included links to the court case, our anonymous interviews, and leaked data. We didn't know who had passed the information to the journalists, but the result was immediate. Hunter's shares fell 3.2%. One of the investors publicly froze his participation in the project, and the board of directors, for the first time in all this time, issued its own statement. The board is concerned about the situation. An internal review of human resources practices has been conducted in the best interests of the company. We do not comment on legal proceedings, but we emphasize our commitment to the principles of equality. "They're panicking," Dana said. "No one conducts an internal review if everything is fine." That evening, Lena called me. "Did you feel it?" she asked. "Feel what?" "A turning point. For the first time ever, I'm not just hoping. I know we can win." I didn't answer right away. But when I hung up, I smiled for the first time in all this time. 2 days after the press release, Hunter's lawyer made the move we had expected, but it still stung. He filed a counterclaim. It said that our campaign was a coordinated attempt to discredit his client's business reputation, that we were interfering in corporate processes, and, of course, spreading false information. "It's a tactic," Dana said calmly. "They can't stop us legally, so they're trying to scare us financially, force us to back down through costs." But we were no longer the ones trembling in the dark. We understood that if we gave in, they would win, and if we held out, their structure would begin to crumble under its own weight. The next court hearing was crowded. The press, supporters, several bloggers recording stories at the entrance. In the courtroom was Hunter, in person for the first time. He sat in the front row, clenching his jaw as if trying to suppress an expression of superiority. When I entered, he glanced at me, and I suddenly saw clearly, he didn't think it would go to court. He didn't believe that we, the women he called a risk, would be here. Calm, confident, with folders in our hands. Claire presented a new batch of evidence in court. John spoke. His voice was quiet, clear. He didn't accuse. He simply showed. "I couldn't pretend not to see anymore," he said. "I saw too often how certain names were crossed out in reports before their effectiveness was even analyzed." On my way out, a reporter asked me, "Linda, how do you feel seeing Blake Hunter in the courtroom?" I looked her in the eyes. "Equality. He's no longer above me. He stands before the law, just like me. That's all I wanted." Those words made headlines, and the next morning, our story appeared on the front page of a national newspaper. After the press release, we didn't expect silence. We knew there would be a response, but the way it came surprised even us. The day after the hearing, Hunter temporarily stepped down as CEO. The official version was, pending an internal audit and legal proceedings. The board of directors issued a statement. The company values its reputation and respects the principle of equality. Until all proceedings are concluded, the CEO's duties will be temporarily transferred to the executive vice president. When Claire read this, she put down the phone and just exhaled. We did it, but we didn't celebrate, because we knew that the main thing was not to remove Hunter. The main thing was to change the system. Firing him did not mean admitting guilt. It was important for the court to put an end to it. In the meantime, the pressure continued. Someone leaked our home address online. I moved my daughter to my sister's. Martha left town temporarily. Melanie deactivated her social media accounts. We became quieter, but not weaker. While we were gathering documents for the next stage of the hearings, we received unexpected news. The district attorney had launched a preliminary investigation into corporate discrimination. This was no longer just a civil case. It was a possible criminal investigation. Dana looked up from her papers. Now it's serious. If the prosecutor's office takes this on, it will set a precedent for the whole country. That evening, the whole team met again. No press, no lawyers, just us. The same risk team we once called ourselves. We drank tea, discussed the news, and were silent. And then Martha said, I always thought that at the end of my life, I would just want silence. But now I realize that there is a silence that is humiliating. And there is a voice that even in a whisper sounds like the truth. Thank you for helping me remember what my voice sounds like. We hugged. No tears. No drama. Like a team. The day before the big meeting, I woke up at 5:12 a.m. The house was quiet, except for the old coffee machine creaking as it turned on. I put on a sweater, opened the window, and sat down to write. Not in a report, not in a document, just in a notebook. I was an operations director. Then I was a shadow. Then I was a threat. Now I am a witness. Not because I was chosen, but because I didn't leave. The trial was scheduled for Wednesday. That was the day the court was to officially hear the parties' testimony and accept the case for trial. We knew we couldn't afford to make any mistakes. A crowd had gathered outside the courthouse. There were posters, cameras, journalists. Someone was holding a sign that read, Your voice is not a risk. I glanced at Claire. She nodded. We went in. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. Hunter's lawyer tried to begin with a statement. This case is based on emotions and unproven interpretations. We ask that the evidence be deemed insufficient. Dana stood up calmly. The case file is 437 pages long. More than 100 of those pages are internal company documents provided by former employees. This isn't about emotions. This is about a system, and women whose lives were destroyed under the guise of optimization. The judge listened. Then, without changing her tone, she said, The court accepts the materials for consideration. A preliminary hearing is expected within 6 weeks. We went outside. Cameras, questions, microphones. But now I felt no fear. I said, We are not seeking revenge. We are telling the truth. And if the truth scares someone, that's not our fault. It's their mirror. The next day, I received a letter from the board of directors. Given the moral damage caused to the case and the company's reputation by the actions of the former CEO, we invite you to consider participating in a new initiative to build corporate ethics. We would like to invite you to join the supervisory board to... I read it 3 times. I wasn't happy. It wasn't a victory. It was a sign. They understood. Now they were looking for a way to survive in a new reality. I picked up a pen and wrote back. I am open to discussion, but only after the final court decision. First, the truth. Then, reforms. The verdict was announced on Friday at 10:06 a.m. The court found that the company's actions did indeed constitute systemic gender discrimination. All evidence was deemed admissible. Hunter lost the case. The court ordered compensation to be paid to all participants and required the company to implement an internal gender equality policy under external supervision within 6 months. The courtroom was deathly silent. Even Hunter, sitting in the corner, didn't say a word. He just stared at the table. We didn't jump for joy. We didn't shout. We sat as we had at the beginning, only now, with our heads held high. On the way out, I was handed the microphone again. Do you feel like a winner? I smiled slightly. I feel like we've been heard. That's more important. 2 days later, the council called me again. This time it was official. They invited me to a meeting, not with an offer, but with a question. How can we fix what has been destroyed? I agreed, not for the status, but for the women who will come after us and won't want to remain silent. Claire launched a legal initiative to support those facing discrimination. Melanie went into teaching. She now trains future financial analysts on how to recognize bias in algorithms and numbers. Martha moved in with her daughter. She said she finally feels at peace. And me? I accepted the board's offer. But on one condition, I would have a team. Women who have experienced discrimination. We won't just watch. We will change things. On my first day in the new office, I walked into the very same meeting room where I had once heard, "Women are a risk." Now there was a sign on the wall. The strong don't cry, the strong come back, and they bring others with them. I sat down at my desk, calmly, confidently, and a new chapter began, without threats, without fear, but with a voice that no one could ignore anymore.